Shotgun underneath the hot sun.
Come on up, guys, come on up. Daddy has trusted me on the big stage now. It's great. I'd like to welcome my guests on stage. This is Hannah Edwards from Peter Allen Estate Agents, Gemma Young from Moverly, and Travis Scholes from LMS.
Hello, everyone.
Take a seat. So one of the many, many privileges that I get working for Simon Whale is that I have to wear many different hats. And one of the many different hats I wear is at the Relocation Agent Network. And I've been traveling the country, going to their regionals and speaking to agents. And there are some excellent agents in that network. And we've more recently sort of tried to pick apart some of the problems that they have, the most common problems. And it all comes down to pretty much the same thing. You will hear about the burden of compliance. So, life has changed and we now need to go and do this. And how do we do it? And you will also hear about pipelines and conveyancing as being something that really has got most agents in a stranglehold. And I'd encourage most agents who see compliance as a burden to look at it as a real opportunity. And we're going to try and get into that a little bit later. But Travis, I'm going to come to you first. You've been running a very interesting pilot. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me, by the way. But I suppose taking a step back about how we got to the pilot in the first place. I think it's over the last 3 or 4 years, I don't need to go through the stats, everyone will know them, about how the home buying process in the UK is elongated, it's getting longer and longer, cancellations are getting bigger and bigger. And for all intensive purposes, it's not fit for the modern day purpose, is kind of what we're getting told. And since the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen lots of concepts about how we go and deal with these problems in terms of blockchain and data standards and all these different things, with the emergence of the OPDA and the PDTF and all these different things happening. And what we decided to do is like, well, these are all great, these are all concepts. Let's go and find out if anything's going to have any material difference on what happens day to day. So with the help of lovely Gemma and Hannah here from Peter Allen and Moverly, we decided to run a pilot where we had 6 months. We put about 2,000 customers through a journey of upfront information. So it was a single ID check, it was material information, it was all your protocol forms and stuff that you would do, and we ordered searches at the front. Testing the theory, if we did those things, and if we found a way to successfully move data from one stakeholder to other stakeholders in the process, where they could reuse that, trust the information, so remove that duplication, remove those wait times, all those things that are perceived as problems today. Deal with the compliance issues up front around material information, make sure the ID check was of a sufficient standard for all these other stakeholders, would have any material impact on the process whatsoever. The results were better than we expected, which is great. Now, as Hannah will probably attest to at some point, it was not without its challenges. It was a pilot and was done as a pilot, but we're talking 44% less cancellations, we're talking 35 days less to exchange, we're talking an exceptional customer experience that was all digital front to back. And the difference was we had a bunch of organizations that decided to share information in a meaningful way for the benefit of the transaction, the benefit of the customer. It wasn't rocket science, but it was underpinned by a trust framework, and it was underpinned by a bunch of businesses happy to share information. And that's kind of where we got to for the pilot. It was, I'm not going to call it simplistic in nature, and Gemma, you can jump in here, but the idea itself in terms of early identification of problems, early identification of data, and sharing that through the network, it was pretty much that simple. We just proved we could do it.
Because if we were to sort of take that back one step, so you talk about cancellations, we will probably talk about fall-throughs,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
The same thing. But from an average customer's experience, so one of the things that I love to do is take a customer who's already been a client of another estate agent, because it's kind of easy pickings, and they come to you and you can wow them with the fantastic customer service, and you get them to the sign-up stage and you go, right, I'm going to need you to do AML again, I'm going to need you to onboard with it, and they go, oh, I've already done it twice with this agent, with that agent, I've done it with 2 solicitors, and so basically there is a huge amount of duplication. So from the actual sort of punter on the street that's actually buying the property, what they're being asked for, it becomes it's not the sexiest part of the process anyway, is it?
It's not.
And we're making it even more clunky and mechanical than it needs to be.
It comes down to risk, doesn't it, in terms of each one of those different process actors has risk they need to mitigate in order to satisfy the requirement. Law firms in particular, I mean, I won't be popular, but conveyancing is not the issue, or not the issue in its entirety as well.
Get off my stage.
I'm waiting for that, to be fair, and I'm sure I'll get a few heckles later on. But if you think about the risk that's they're burdened with from the lender in terms of things they've got to satisfy to make sure that they know they're on the hook if something goes wrong. So I don't blame them for wanting to do all those things again. I don't blame them for wanting to make sure that they've got control over that process. But we've never given them an alternative either. We've never found a way to give them information that's meaningful and that can be reused and trusted in a way. And I think the emergence of technology, the emergence of things like the property data trust framework, the emergence of digital data, i.e. things that are happening that can be reshared, has changed that. And I think there's a couple of conveyancers in the room here, but we talk to them every day. There's a real motivation behind making that process easier. Now for those guys, they don't get paid till completion either. They're talking 4 or 5 months from taking on work with 30% fall through or cancellation and hoping they get paid at the end of that. I mean, it's their best interest as well to make that easier, but they won't do it at the expense of taking more risk. And that's the thing we've got to get around. How do we mitigate that risk and that compliance element and also deliver efficiency in the transaction?
Okay, so I'm going to skip Gemma for a moment. We're going to come back to you though, okay? I won't forget about you. But Hannah, I mean, you are a huge agency in terms of branches. It's around 30?
Yeah, 30 branches.
30 branches, okay. So to roll out a new product, you don't do it on a whim, because you need to you need to train it basically into your processes as well. So just tell us about your experience with kind of running it into the company, and what I'm keen to hear is, I mean, management says this is a really good idea. What does the actual negotiator actually handling it on the other side, what are they experiencing?
Well, for me, when I first met Trav and Gem, and we got in a room together, and then of course they started to talk about this wonderful concept of everything that Travis has just talked about then, it was a quick win for me, because what I heard was, I'm going to make it easier for my customer. In turn, I'm going to make it easier for my lister or my valuer that has to go into these living rooms, for these people to try and sort of get them moved from one chapter in their lives into the next one. So for me, I was interested quite quickly, because it's no secret, is it, that, I think we could all agree that the industry as a whole could do with a bit of an overturn in that section. But for me, like I said, all I heard was, it's simple, it's in one place, we can collect this data, we can share it where it's needed. And how that transpired to our customers was, sign me up, because I just want something that's easy. When they call us for a valuation to put their house on the market, I think we can easily forget how apprehensive they are, even if they're a seasoned mover, as to like what a big deal it actually is. I've been an agent for more years than I'd care to share, but even the last time I moved, I was really apprehensive, and I'm somebody that I would call being in the know of what to do. So that was a big thing for me straight from the off. From a point of view of getting our agents onboarded, now, I was dealing with a huge room of human beings who, are very stuck in their ways, they like their habits, they know how they want to do things.
Estate agents.
Yeah.
You're with friends.
I think there was a quick general consensus of an agreement that we do want to change something for the greater good. So again, I was sort of bought into it quite quickly. It was quite easy to sort of get them on board with the idea behind it, but how was I going to get them to execute it in our living room? And it by no means was perfect, because we were entering into a pilot. So my job was to get them to make sure that they gave that feedback, for anything that was clunky or didn't quite work. But as soon as they started to see the value, and there were a few key things for me, which were the ease of the use of the system in the first instance. So even for the technophobes, it was actually quite an easy system and quite an easy platform for them to be able to use. And even if we just look at, they needed to do their material information and upload their identification to that portal in the first instance, I think the stat in the end was like 66-68% of people actually went straight on to do their TA forms. And this is before they've even got their house onto the market. So they're in an even better position as a seller to be buying from. And this is what we could sort of articulate to them, that we could then, as we were showing buyers around, showcase them not only as the house to buy, but actually the seller to buy from.
So, I mean, as agents, that there is a hesitancy to sort of introduce that, because The exciting bit is I go into the living room, I do my spiel, I wow them, and they say, David, I want to get it on the market. We say, when can we book in for photos? We go around, we do all of that stuff, and they get excited. And the next question is, so when will it be on Rightmove, or when will it be on the portals? And you then sort of have to say, well, okay, it'll take us a couple of days to do this, that, and the other. In the bad old days, I would go in the morning and I would force it on the market in the afternoon. Nothing. I mean, no, like, can you pop into the office with your ID? Someone would wander through the door with a passport and half a bank statement. My staff would just take it, photocopy it, shove it in a file. We wouldn't check it. We wouldn't know if they even owned the house. But that was how we all used to do things back in those days. And if you would have turned around to me and said, right, what I'd actually like you to do, David, is stop that process there and say, before we can get you on the market, we'd like you to fill in all of these questions, because actually it's going to be really helpful. Your solicitors are going to need the answers to these questions anyway later on down the line. And doesn't it make sense to provide them to the buyer up front? That is possibly the biggest passion killer you can get at that stage when they're excited to put it on the market. So I think how we did that, I mean, we started to digitize the process piecemeal. So we would use an ID verification thing, and it did all the fun stuff where they have to sort of like prove their liveness by doing weird things on camera and things like that. And that's all good, but that was disconnected entirely from any other information that we needed. It was disconnected entirely from the actual forms I needed them to fill in, signing my agency agreement, all of that stuff. I had things in sort of 5 or 6 different places. And the process for both ourselves and also the client was just a little bit miserable. So the truth is, I would be the blocker to rolling it out, because I'd go, no, there's no chance. I'm listing this property, we're getting it on the market, and I'd rather have my team clear up after me, running around collecting those pieces of information for the next week, than actually do it all up front and properly. And then I met Gemma. How you doing? Because I get to speak to a lot of suppliers, so I think, to seem impartial, there are suppliers now, not just yourselves at Moverly, but there are other suppliers out there that are making that process not only seamless, easy for us to use as the agent, but it looks incredibly good for the client. So in terms of a digital experience, if you buy anything online, if you sign up to any service online, you can be greeted by a nice UX, and the user experience is beautiful. And it takes them through sequentially from one bit of information to another. And so, yeah, you find yourself answering the property questions, because actually that's pretty easy. It just seems to flow. And if only there was a way to do that. And when we checked in and you showed me Moverly, that's exactly what it does. So to me as an agent, it gets the job done. But more importantly, if I'm using it as an agent, doesn't that also look like I am providing a much better level of customer service to the actual client?
Yeah, I've got a very important question first for the audience, though. How many people have had an espresso martini? Amazing, amazing. We're expecting some heckles shortly. What is often overlooked, and I think customer experience is hugely important, but what's also overlooked is agent experience. We don't think about that enough. And that is, we've seen really great advances in like vertical technology. So there's amazing digital ID providers, and we've got CRMs, we've got all these onboarding tools, but we're having to go to a lot of different places to do those things. So yeah, I think the agent experience and connecting it all together is super important. But of course then the customer experience is. And that's our job, really.
Just had a note from Simon.
I was going to say, I wonder what's in the notes.
No more martinis for you. That's what you... Carry on, sorry.
So the experience is huge, and that's why, I mean, you mentioned the pilot. We were really surprised that 60-70% of people went straight from their required material information to just do all of their legal forms. I mean, we've tried to do versions of this before, and anybody who's tried will know that there's something happening for us to get to that level on the first run through, right? And that means we can change a lot of the different processes because data's there, you don't have to do it 3 times, you do it once, and importantly, you connect in the conveyancers that you're working with, which is what Hannah did, you know, and then you're a large part of the way there.
Just to add to that, if you don't mind,
Sure.
When we did some customer feedback post the pilot, the answer was, well, isn't that just a process? I mean, people move so infrequently in the UK. When you say
They don't know what
they don't know what the process is, and when you've got a great bunch of estate agents going, that's your process for getting your property online. And if you do all these things, then this is your result. You know, a more motivated vendor, buy with more information. That's what I need you to do. They go, oh, okay. And the feedback was, well, isn't that just a process? And I think that's part of that journey. I think, you know, we did some data around in terms of valuation to listing, in terms of the performance increase we saw in that, because the vendor felt more in control and more engaged in what was going on. But it was just the process. That was the main bit of feedback. It was just a really good UX, so really good salespeople in the front room talking about the process, and we just made it simple and easy.
I mean, somebody mentioned, I don't know who it was, I think it was Josh Fegan mentioned purple bricks earlier. And for all the threat that we traditional agents felt from purple bricks, the biggest threat really was that from the public's perspective, again, they don't move very frequently, but they got greeted by a kind of nice online experience. They can book a viewing online. They don't have to spend 3 hours arguing with one of my staff as to whether or not they're free at 2 o'clock on Wednesday. It either was or it isn't. And that they did extremely well. There were other things that we could argue that perhaps they didn't, but that sort of side of things we were left to play catch up with, and now we have all of this at our disposal. And I think that if you are a customer and you are onboarding with an agent today, and bearing in mind that you don't move all the time, you are going to walk away thinking, actually, David's got a fantastic process. It was very smooth and it was frictionless. But sorry to mention a dirty word on stage, but money-wise, it all carries a cost. But is that also, and here's a question for all of you, I can see Gemma nodding because she and I have talked about this before, but particularly for Hannah as well, the frustration for agents, and one of the things we grapple with the most when we talk about mental health in our industry is the fact that we run around doing amazing jobs, putting massive effort into it, and we don't get paid unless the transaction goes through. And so you're living on that knife edge the whole time. And we've been looking for a way to try and sort of get these customers to actually engage with us early doors, but invest in the process and actually put some money into it. So to rewind the clock 20 years, when I first started out 27 years ago, once the client had sort of put an offer in, we didn't consider it sold. But once they'd booked their survey or instructed their solicitors, we started to breathe out a bit and we went, oh great, they're spending money, right? That's what's happening now, so they're more invested in the process. But we can actually do that now up front because this does carry a cost. And I know it's a bit controversial because it requires a mindset shift from our point of view, but we can actually monetize this and at the same time not just make money off it, but ensure that these clients are not just having a go.
Yeah, I think the win-win for me when we completed the pilot was once that our agents could see that there was clear value because it was easy for the customer, it meant that it was easier for them. So it was much easier for them to say, go and tell your friends, so we can gain more instructions off the back of that. And even coming back, circling back to what you just mentioned then, like I'd be one of those people who wouldn't want to do it. Trust me when I say I had a few of those as well. But actually when we went to conclude the pilot, and Trav and I went and got them all back in a room to give them the results of everything that, you know, it was all their work, I was able to say to them, oh, don't worry guys, you know, we've concluded this now, tick in the box, well done. Trav's going to go away now and sort of, you know, make this the real deal. So you can go back to your old ways. And of course, all I was met with was a sea of people saying, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And so, of course, we looked at each other, because Trav had asked me beforehand, will they be okay, like, switching this back off? And I was like, yeah, they'll be fine. You know, they're humans. They like, you know, they're habitual. They'll just go back to their old habits. And they were like, no, 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 no. So one of us asked, like, can we have a show of hands? Who wants to stick with the way that we're doing it now? and wasn't it? It was just unanimous. They actually physically put their hands up in the air to say, actually, we want to stick with the way that we're doing it, because they could see the value. Because of course, you know, when you've got valuers in a room, their job in that moment is to win that person over. They've only got probably 45 minutes to an hour and a half to win that person over. And of course, we expect them to tell us their deepest, darkest secrets. We want them to trust us and all of these things. And then of course, they've got to leave that house, do their thing, get to the next one to win that next person over.
Do you think it actually makes us look, so if we are charging for these services or we're making people engage with us at that level, do you think it actually makes us look more professional? So what I mean by that is,
100%.
if you walked into a solicitor's office and they said, right, we need to do AML and the cost is going to be X, Y, Z, can you pay that please? You'd go, yeah, here you go, here's my money. Somehow in our head as agents, we went, oh, they'll never pay us that money, why would they? Because we're not treating ourselves as being almost professional enough to warrant that money and to be trusted with it. But it's a process that needs to be done. I mean, it's a massive legal responsibility, isn't it?
I mean, absolutely. And I think this is one of the big things is there's a huge opportunity to charge now. We're at a bit of an inflection point, right? Because, you know, agents have been having to cover some back office costs along with floor plans and photos. It's not insignificant. And then you think of the rate that actually turn into a commission back, right? It puts us all under pressure. But this is a point in time where vendors have to do upfront material information. It's an opportunity and a door into charging. And not only that, I think when you're differentiating with a digital sale-ready standard as an agent, and you're getting something for that vendor, they can differentiate their house up front and know that they're getting a better service. So just in terms of stats on that, for the agents using Moverly, we're getting now, I think it's over half who are opting for a customer charge model. And in that model, they can, you know, add their margin and actually balance things out a bit, because they know 100% up front we are getting some money on the balance sheet. You know, it's in the bank.
I would never suggest for a second that we'd use tech or solutions to try and bind customers against their will, but we all take on customers from time to time where it's hard to sell that, and we need to manage them in some way. So maybe we take it on and it might be slightly higher than we want it to be, and we end up in that kind of relationship where we can tweak this, we can tweak that, we move the photos around, we may drop the price a little, but ultimately they start to talk about moving on. If they're invested in the process, if they've paid for it, if their experience was good, so that they know that it was a smooth experience, my theory, and I've not tested it, is that actually that's going to lead to less people leaving you as an agent, because I've kind of done that. My solicitor's going to accept it. David's accepted it. I don't want to go through that process again with somebody else because I've already answered all of those questions. Is there anything in that?
I mean, it's important to actually talk about how much goes into that being able to be true, because it's not right now, right? The reality is you can collect, everybody knows you can collect this data up front, and even if it's digital, you're not going to get a conveyancer to accept it unless there's a relationship there. And that's one of the fundamental shifts, and we're talking about digital transformation, is the connection of different participants who have been siloed for so long, now being able to come together and work to new standards. So like when we did this with Peter Allen, we sat in a room with their conveyancers for some time, right? This is not, it's not like digital is the silver bullet and here you go. You know, it doesn't really happen like that. But we sat in a room and we talked through, right, you know, you're happy to take a digital AML in this way. Are you guys happy to take this? Are you happy with the source provenance? Are you happy with your insurance? Are you happy? But the point is that when you do that work, this can all work. And there are, you know, a lot of big things. Government are really encouraging smart data. We're doing a lot around digital sale-ready standards in the market, not just for agents, not just for consumers, but for the conveyancers too. They need to work to a new standard. They're doing what they're doing, but they are ingesting data and they're kind of working to a new standard so that the results are possible.
This is where we come in as LMS. So we've been working for 30 years in this space. We see 600,000 transactions a year. We're connected to 98, 99% of all conveyancers in the UK. We've built a distribution network to push this information around in a way that can be trusted. We're already home for trusted information. We get about 10 million hits from law firms a year and lenders taking information from us and ingesting information. The key to this is standardisation and distribution. So we've got progress in standardisation. We've got the government looking at smart data. We've got a trust framework that underpins these things. We've got schemes. We've got all these things that didn't exist until very, very recently. And now we've got a distribution network as well that can push this information out in a very meaningful way. All those building blocks we're talking about, real fundamental change and evolution of the product, are right here in front of us. And there are some blockers. There's some reordering of processes where we charge for these things. This is not a proven science, but everything that we need to create a more efficient process, we've proven we can do it. We've proven it creates efficiency. And we've proven we know how. We now can. And I think it's a really, really exciting time.
So there's hope. And to use your trigger phrase, evolution, not revolution. So it's not going to happen overnight, but it's happening, right?
I think a lot of what we need exists today, and it's about repurposing those things. And I can talk from where I sit in the process, but there is some new products and services, new ways of thinking into data science that do fit into this. But I'm a really simple bloke. It's really like, we've got information. Can we share that in a way that's meaningful and can be trusted and reused? Well, yeah, we can do that. How we standardise that information, that's the revolution bit. And how we go about our journey together is the bit that we need to do next. But this only changes if we decide to change as a group of people. The pockets of this stuff's been happening for years, and it's never really had the desired effect because we've not been able to do it en masse. There's a real motivation behind this now. Government are getting involved, private enterprise are leading the way. We have got to route through these things. So it's now possible. It's quite exciting.
Okay, well, I could sit here and talk to you about this for hours because I'm a very strange person. I love this stuff. But in the corner of my eye, I can see that clock and it's now in red and in minus. It looks like my bank account. So we're going to wrap this up. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let's have more of these talks because this part of the process needs to change. We can't just sit there and go, oh, well, it's a bit shit, but it's going to get better at some point. It doesn't get better without us all collaborating. So thank you very much. A huge round of applause. Thank you.